The following is a video clip from the Fascist Maxims podcast, where Marshal Ironsides and myself recommend books for people who are new to or curious about fascism. While some of the recommendations are books that specifically deal with fascism, its policies, and principles, some of the other recommendations are books that have nothing to do with the political aspects of fascism in itself, but deal more so with the mentality and spirit of the fascist. Because it is often left out by the non-fascists when they describe fascism, people overlook the fact that fascism is driven by the metaphysical, a belief in a greater man and thus a greater society. Fascism is simply the tool to obtain that ideal. Now, of course, what is quote-unquote greater is subjective. So it is important, if someone wants to identify with the politics of fascism, that they also identify with the virtues promoted by fascist after fascist. While the policies and religion differed country to country, the spirit was the same. A fanatical drive and a belief that promoted a better man and society. This better man, idealized by fascists, was defined by his virtues. You can call them higher ethics, masculine virtues, or whatever else you want. It does not matter. What matters is all fascists around the world, while differing in ethnicity, religion, region, and race, all define the new man as someone guided by virtues of honor, honesty, courage, sacrifice, loyalty, unity, steadfastness, exploration, among other things. Basically, our core values before the modern age. So, while some of the books recommended will help you understand the policies of fascism, the others will help you understand the spirit of fascism.
That's what it is. It's striving for better self and better society, and this is I've read fascist doctrines from Chile to Germany, and it's always the same thing. It's building a better society, better person, and the fact, and I think, and this is again a topic for another episode, but I think we're in an era where fascism is going to start being accepted by people, and I think once they find out how positive and how forthright this political philosophy is, they're going to be very angry at the people that told them different. They're going to be very angry at the people that told them porn and Big Macs was what American liberty was all about. So I look forward to that day, and it's slowly starting to head that direction now. But with that said, like I said earlier, our enemies defined fascism, and so they put this real negative connotation on it, and it attracts a lot of shit because of that, and we have to filter through that to find the learned fascists. And unfortunately, there's all too few out there. There's all too few. There's a lot of people that call themselves fascists on the internet, but there's all too few fascists, learned fascists on the internet. So we hope to bring them on there. But as far as newcomers or people curious, what reading selection would you give them? Let's run through a couple books that you would recommend to the newcomer or the curious person so they can get a grasp on this fascism. What is it about?
In terms of understanding the underpinnings of the movement, Nietzsche is definitely a start in the right direction. And to that end, there has to be a bit of a caveat, because Nietzsche can be, I like that he doesn't construct a system. He writes in aphorisms, these nice little chunks that you can sit there and chew on. But you have to be very careful, because he really enjoyed being obscure sometimes. But he was a start. Also, I would suggest not all the dialogues of Plato, but snippets. Like, find a good sampling, that whole Socratic method of dialectics and the idealism, because again, it has to be stressed that this movement deals in ideals and taking those ideals and finding the best way to bring them into human cultural manifestation. Joseph Campbell, the great writer of comparative myth, he died unfortunately in 1989. He is famous for a series of interviews he did in 1987 called The Power of Myth. Great writer. He would totally disagree with us, by the way, but you know, on fascist principles, but that's his problem. I think, and this is a strange one, but Moby Dick.
No, I see why. I see why. Believe me.
It's encyclopedic, but it is spiritually encyclopedic. It just, all the great fascist themes are there. The understanding of destiny, the ideas that you have to be. Ahab didn't care what he was up against. He went in, knew he was licked, and he went in just the same.
He had a great cause. He had a great cause, and he had to achieve it.
Yeah, yeah, and so there's that.
Matter of fact, he was fanatical in his great cause, which fanaticism is much welcome.
Oh yeah, absolutely, absolutely. You know, there was the great scene at the beginning of the quest where he has the harpooneers bring up the bottoms of their harpoons and they put rum and then a drop of his blood, and he has them all drink death to Moby Dick. You know, the willing to just lay it all on the line, and that's one of the things that I admire about Hitler. Another, well, book that I only recently discovered. We've been talking about the Codex Fascismo by H.R. Morgan. Really got to take my hat off to this individual. He did a really fantastic job in gathering so many disparate sources. And I'm reading it slow on purpose because it is like cognac for the soul. You know, it's just sweet, very sweet. You know, and I also suggest that a fascist should have some familiarity with Marx. Not to go in for Das Kapital and the heavier books, but just to get an idea of what we're up against.
The manifesto?
Yeah, a little bit, especially, you know, there are certain, even back then, the Marxists were saying that they wanted to erode the foundations of the family. And I published on my blog this past week, not to plug or anything, but I can't remember her name, but she's a transgendered or a lesbian or thing or Zer or whatever it is they want to be called now.
Right.
But she admitted that the point of this whole transgendered thing with the bathrooms and all of this is they want to overcome sexual duality, and that they are taking aim at the underpinnings of the family. If they can get everybody jumbled up in their mind about gender, then the state can step in and say, well, then we'll just raise the children, thanks. Just like 1984 or Brave New World. Which both, okay, there you go right there. There's two books that have to be on the list. 1984, and especially, I think, Animal Farm. Because anybody who is contemplating a move into communism should understand that there is a movement that is looking to betray you from the word go. And history bears us out on that one. I saw what you've talked about on a number of occasions on YouTube. Oh, I watched, somebody literally said, well, I watched this video, guess I'm a fascist now.
I've had people who've watched some of my videos and thanked me for making them a fascist, and then 2 weeks later saying I wasn't a fascist. So yeah. A few books now. First, like, and this is completely, this person wasn't a fascist himself. but Catechism of the Revolutionist by Sergei Nietzsche. He was more of an anarchist. This is important, I think, because this gives you the mentality a revolutionary needs. And it's not to say word for word what's in here, but it's the spirit of what's expressed in here. You'll realize, because people throw around the term revolutionary way too frequently, and you'll realize why you're not a revolutionary until you take this mindset that's in this short little pamphlet. So even though he was an anarchist, I guess you can describe him as, he was very fanatical and passionate about his cause. He died in prison. They even offered to let him out of prison, and so he would snitch on his comrades. And he punched, the general. They came in there and asked him to do that, and they chained him. And he later died because of illnesses in prison. But it really captures the soul of what is needed for a revolutionary mindset. Next, Runaway Horses by Yukio Mishima. Now, this is the second book in a 4-book series entitled The Sea of Fertility. Yukio Mishima was a fascist in Japan, and he tried to revitalize Japan's emperor and their older culture that got destroyed in World War II. And he eventually committed self-suicide, seppuku, on himself. The last person to do that, yes. A very beautiful man, very beautiful. All 4 books is great, but Runaway Horses is something you can read without reading the rest of the books involved, and you can completely get the message. It stands on its own. It's all about youth, fascistic youth, trying to revolutionize and destroy and get the capitalists and Japan being westernized, trying to kill and get them out of Japan. And it's beautifully written, and there's a beautiful spirit caught in the book, and it's definitely a must read. It'll put hair on your balls. Runaway Horses. Now, the most powerful book I've read, and I agree with you, as far I wouldn't lead a new coming fascist to Mein Kampf, but it had the most impact on me. But the most powerful book I've ever read was For My Legionaries by Cadrianu from the Iron Guard. I even have the shirt on. I mean, he was a fascist in Romania. And his sacrifice, his will, his determination is unmatched, unmatched. And the tragedy of his death and how it happened, and the torture and the slow decay that took place, he was a hero. Oh, he's a hero and a martyr. And his name is mentioned all too little, all too little. But this is the most powerful book I've ever read. It brings me to tears. Every time I read it, I'll sit there in tears reading it. And I have pictures of him on my wall here. And there are nights where I can look at it and seriously come to tears thinking about his sacrifice and what he's given, and think about how much of that's been forgotten, and how noble his cause was. His whole story is in here, his life story, and it's a wonderful life. It is a must read if you want to see what the fascist philosophy brings out of an individual. You will find it in this book. Now, he
was a great man.
Oh, he was a great man. He was a great man. Now, like you said, H.R. Morgan, I hope to get him on the show. I'm trying to get in contact with him, get him on the show, because both of them, parts 2 and 3, and parts 4, 5, and 6 here, the Codex Fascismo, and this is Fascism in a Total Society, and this is Fascism, Integralism in the Corporative Society, and these are a godsend, a godsend. What he has done, for a long time I was looking up material on the Brazilian integralists, and it was hard to find. And it was a term I liked. In 2010, we started a website, American Integralism, and so I love that term. And I took it from the Brazilians, and we tried to incorporate it here. But for the longest time, I was looking for the material. You could only find a little bit online. He took the pain to translate so many works from so many different, the Sinarchists in Mexico, in Chile, the National Socialists there, in Brazil, the Integralists, and De Rivera in Spain. All of this stuff translated and brought forth to us in these great books. These are definitely, you have to have them for your library. You will get a full understanding of the fascist philosophy when you see it spring up in different parts of the world organically and the same. Now, the last two, The Doctrine of Fascism by Mussolini. It's important. It's a quick read for any newcomer, and it speaks of the fundamentals of fascism. But the most important, if you're only going to pick up one book about fascism, and that's all the time you have, that's all you can dedicate to it, It's the origins and doctrines. That's of who I say is Giovanni Gentile, who I'm often corrected as Gentile, but but this this is the book. My whole fascist philosophy video was based off of this book. This probably goes deeper into the philosophical aspects of fascism than anything else I've read. He puts it out there and forward. He was the intellectual. He was the thought. He was the action. Okay, so he was able to manifest it into real life. He was the one that created it, made it sound beautiful, and you need to read it. This is the book for any person curious about fascism or any newcomer to fascism. This is definitely the book to check out if you can only do one.
I just thought of two others. One was Sun Tzu's Art of War. The other book you mentioned, Japanese fascism, Hagakure.
Oh yes, oh yes, yes.
Yeah, Hidden by Leaves, the book of the samurai code.
Yeah.
You know, when
do you remember the Way of the Samurai?
The Way of the Samurai?
Yes.
You talking about the film?
No, oh no, the saying in the Hagakure, the way of the samurai is death.
It's the way of death.
Yes,
precisely.
Yes. Oh.
And you know, fascism is in a lot of ways a path of death, but not in the sense of building concentration camps. But well, hey, you and I would not be where we are today if we hadn't died several times over.
Yes. Yes.
You know, a fascist does die to himself on a regular basis. He has to. Otherwise, he can't ascend to the light, you know, and that's exactly what the samurai ethos is all about.
Yeah, there's a great saying. There's a great quote in there, and it says, when the option is between life and death is 50-50, choose death. And that's been my life motto. That's been my life. Let's always go forward. When it's there and you don't know if you're going to survive or not, just go forward. Just go.
Right.
Another fascist, Ezra Pound, said, if a man is not willing to take risks for his beliefs, either he's no good or his beliefs are no good. And it's in the fascist mindset. It's always, we believe this, we must go forward, we must promote it. What strikes me is, it's funny you brought up, and we can bring up the Book of Five Rings too. That's another great one from the samurai culture. But
sorry for the abrupt cutoff, but that was the end of our conversation about books. Feel free to add your suggestions in the comments section. Being a fascist isn't simply a political decision, but a way of life. Learning the spirit of fascism is vital to becoming a fascist. In a time where fascism is demonized, not more fascist websites or members in name only are needed, but philosopher warriors instead. Or cultured thugs, as Jonathan Bowden used to call them. People strong in body, mind, and soul. Books, especially books like the ones mentioned in this video, help build that strong mind and even helps feed the soul.